can you tell me a little bit about how the Camarena investigation began? Obviously, there's a lot of work that you were doing leading up to that, to where you were familiar with how the cartels operated. You'd already proven yourself as a good infiltrator, and was very fluent in the proper Mexican dialects and things like that. So, you tell me a little bit about Kiki's story, and then how you came to be involved a little bit. I know you've had to tell this story a lot, but it's a key part in your story.
Well, I had met Kiki when he was working out of the Fresno office before he was assigned to the Guadalajara, Mexico office before he was kidnapped, of course. And I had been wanting to basically do a wiretap on this heroin trafficking organization in Indio, California, on this side. And I didn't have the informants that I needed, the affiance for a search warrant. So they wanted to do a wiretap operation, not a search warrant, a wiretap operation.
Okay.
So Kiki by then had transferred from Fresno to Guadalajara. So I asked around, and they said, you know what? The guy that had informants in their area that you could probably use is Kiki Camarena. I said, okay. So I'll call Kiki and see what sources he can share with me, what informants he can share with me. So I called Kiki in Guadalajara, and I said, Kiki, I'm trying to go up on this organization over here in Indio, and they tell me you got sources out here that know everybody out here that are pretty good. He goes, yeah. He says, you can use Goyo and Catalino Nunez, they're brothers, and they work together as informants. And yeah, I'll call him and have him report to you or call you. I was working out of the LA division then. And so he did. And the informants called me, hey, we're the guys that Kiki recommended. You need us to work for you. And I go, yeah. I says, where are you guys from? And they said, oh, we're from the Indio area. And I says, great. This is where their organization was selling heroin out of. So I started working them. And they were the affiants, and I was the affiant, and we testified. We were able to go up on the wiretap, called a Title I back then. I don't even know what they call them now anymore. But anyway, as I was doing the investigation, I was calling Kiki back and forth, and that's when he got picked up. As when Camarena was picked up,
After that.
Yeah, it was right after that. Well, while I was talking to him, well, not at the time I was talking, but at the time that I had been contacting him back and forth on the phone using his sources. Later, I was working out at a gym, and I saw that he had been kidnapped by the drug lords.
And he was kidnapped by the drug lords, but was tipped off by somebody on our side. They were tipped off in terms of where he was and things like that as well.
Well, after that, I was sent to Mexico to go after the cartel guys that they suspected. Carlos Quintero and Ernesto Fonseca, Miguel Felix Gallardo, and those guys, they suspected they were behind his kidnapping. So I went over there and was involved in several shootouts trying to get these guys. But they told me in headquarters before I went out of Mexico, go over there, and if you try to get him arrested and investigated for Kiki's murder, and we pretty much know they were the ones that were involved. They said, so if you got to kill some of them, well, go ahead and kill them.
Did they have any evidence at that point that they gave you? Like, here's the evidence that we have that these are the guys?
Well, they did have some sources that were reporting that they had done it.
Okay, sources.
This is before I got involved in the case.
Right.
And then I'll tell you when I got involved and what I suspected. So anyway, so I go to Mexico and I go after some of these guys, and they came after me. They tried to kill me too, so they had to evacuate me out of Mexico because they put they were talking on the phone, and it was recorded by DEA that they were going to try to assassinate me because I was basically going after them, and I had already had a couple of good shootouts with them and killed some of their guys. So they were after me personally, and they tried to kidnap my wife and my daughter when they were at the beach one time. So then they evacuated me out of Mexico. When they evacuated me out of Mexico, that's when they assigned me to run the Camarena murder case. So they had been investigating the case for 5 years already, and they didn't have any eyewitnesses. So when I get assigned the case, I get pulled back to Washington, and I was asked to do two things by the director of DEA back then. One was to get witnesses so that we could find out who picked up Kiki, how they killed him, how they interrogated him, and they also wanted to know basically what happened because we didn't have any witnesses. Number one, and number two, they also asked me. By then, I had done a few operations with the CIA, and they asked me, could I kidnap this one guy, the doctor that had been involved in injecting Camarena drugs while they interrogated him.
And that was, and just for context, he was injecting drugs to revive him as he passed out,
Right.
things like that.
Right, because
to
when
keep
they
him
were
alive.
interrogating him, from what the witnesses had told the investigators, and I wasn't involved yet, he was passing out because they were torturing him so bad that from the pain, the body can only tolerate so much pain, and after it reaches a certain threshold, you pass out to defend yourself. The body passes out. So what they did is they brought the doctor in to inject him to get the heart fibrillating faster. We were injecting lidocaine right into his heart so that blood would flow to his brain and he would become conscious, and they could continue to interrogate him. And they wanted the doctor that did that really bad. So that when they brought me in, they said, we really want this doctor bad. Can you get him? And I said, yeah, I can get him. How are you going to get him? He says, give me some money. I'll get him. He says, you're going to kidnap him? No, first of all, they told me, it was really funny because they told me in headquarters, can you do an extraterritorial rendition? And I said, what's that? A kidnapping. Yeah, I can do that. And they said, okay, go ahead and we want you to kidnap this doctor that basically injected Camarena with lidocaine and stuff like that, because by then they already had Kiki's body, and they found out that he had been basically injected with lidocaine to keep the heart.
And this was still the head of the DA.
Right. This is the
asking you.
director of the DA.
The
directly.
director.
So I said, yeah, I can do that. No problem. And they go, okay, so what's it going to take? And I said, money. And you can do it. And I said, yeah. How much money do you think that's going to take? And I said, that's not much. Maybe 250,000, a quarter of a mil. I said, I can get it done. They said, okay, you do it. I said, okay, I'll do it. So those were my initial orders: get witnesses and get the doctor kidnapped.
Okay.
And they asked me, how long will it take you to get this doctor kidnapped? I said, how long will it take you to get me the money? They said, we can get your money to you in a week. I said, I'll have him in 2 weeks. You have him in the United States kidnapped and everything in 2 weeks? And I said, yes. I knew what I was doing. It wasn't the first time I was going to do anything like
Obviously,
that.
yeah.
No, so I knew they didn't know what I had done, because I was always, loaned over to other agents to do all kinds of weird shit. Yeah. But anyway,
you're working in dark circles, though.
Yeah,
like we talked before too. Other agents don't really recognize what you're doing. You work that deep undercover. It's not like it's broadcast,
right?
So, yeah.
It's not broadcast, like I said. So we got him kidnapped and everything else. But when I come on the case, it was interesting because they tell me that Camarena was kidnapped because the traffickers were mad because of his involvement in seizing the Buffalo Chihuahua fields, which was the biggest ever seizure of marijuana in the history of drug enforcement. They seized 10,000 tons.
Billions of dollars.
Yeah, billions of dollars of marijuana from Carlos Quintero Fonseca and the Guadalajara cartel. So I'm told that that's a reason that the traffickers wanted Kiki, because of they had identified him as being responsible for that seizure. And they tell me, okay, these are your targets: Rafael Caro Quintero, Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, Miguel Ángel Pérez Gallardo, El Cochiloco. Susueta was his last name. I can't think of his first name right now. And these are your targets. I said, okay. So try to get him enough witnesses. We want to get him indicted, okay, because they weren't even indicted for Camarena's murder yet. And I said, okay. So then I called my compadre, Charlie Lugo, who was in charge of the Buffalo Rays in Mexico. And he was now in Dallas. So I called him in Dallas. And I said, Charlie, what was Kiki's involvement in the seizure of the Buffalo Chihuahua fields? You were in charge of the whole operation. He says he wasn't involved. I said, what? They're telling me that that's why the reason, the motive for his murder, that the cartels are mad at Kiki. He said the only involvement he had was when we found out about him, we couldn't drive in and do surveillance because all the roads leading into that area were blocked out by Mexican Army soldiers and DFS agents, Director of Federal Security Agents. And I said, what? He says, so what we did is we called Kiki. He had an informant pilot that we needed to fly over.
Overhead surveillance.
So that we can basically photograph the area. And that's all Kiki did. So when the pilot flew over the fields, he told me, he photographed them and he flew back to Guadalajara and gave the film to Kiki. Kiki developed it and then he took it to Mexico City. So he wasn't involved in the raid at all? He says, no, we didn't use Kiki. Kiki wasn't involved.
Not even the reason why they knew about it.
Right. So I'm thinking to myself, why are they telling me, they meaning my agency, now I'm in charge of the murder investigation, that he was killed by the traffickers because he was responsible for the seizure of the Buffalo Chihuahua fields. So now the guy that was really in charge of it is telling me no, that Kiki wasn't even there. That made me suspicious. So I asked Charlie. I said, Charlie, his name is Charles Lugo. I'll call him Charlie. I've known him for all my life. By the way, he passed. But anyway, I told Charlie. I said, why are they telling me that Kiki Camarena is being basically held accountable by all the drug lords for the Chihuahua race? And you tell me he wasn't even involved. And he said he wasn't. Then why are they telling me that's the motive for his murder? He says, brother, watch out. He says, it doesn't make sense to me. What Kiki was not involved. I was there. We arrested over 7,000 peasants and we seized over 10,000 tons of marijuana, he said. And Kiki was not a participant in the raids or anything. I ran the operation, Hector, and I said, I know you did. So that kind of made me suspicious. Then, as I started talking to the agents that had been working the murder case, I said, how did Carlos Quintero flee from Mexico when we were looking to arrest him for being involved in Kiki's murder? He said, oh, they told me, a CIA pilot by the name of Warner Lutz flew him to Costa Rica.
Who's the they told you this?
The agents that had been investigating the case.
Okay.
I'm new. Remember, I just got brought in.
Okay, this is part of your brief, right?
And I'm like, wait a minute. How do you guys know that a CIA pilot by the name of Warner Lutz flew Carlos Quintero from Mexico to Costa Rica so we couldn't arrest him? What's the CIA got to do with this shit? He said, we don't know, but we can't find the pilot. And, Hector, a lot of those pilots that flew for the CIA or fly for the CIA, those are not real names. Those are undercover names that they use. They're subcontract employees, like informants of the CIA. I said, something doesn't smell right here. So then I find out that there was DFS agents, Director of Federal Security agents from Mexico involved in Kiki's kidnapping. I'm thinking to myself, I'm new here, but I'm thinking to myself, okay, a CIA pilot flew Kiki to Costa Rica so he could escape so we couldn't arrest him. And now the DFS, I'm being told, were involved in picking up Kiki in front of the consulate. And I know, because I worked with the DFS and I worked in Mexico for the CIA, that the DFS and the CIA are one unit. They work together.
Yeah, the CIA was part of putting that together back in the day, right?
They put together the DFS.
Yeah.
The DFS worked under the aegis and under the direction of the CIA in Mexico. So I'm finding out that now DFS agents were involved in picking up Kiki. So I decide that I'm going to basically recruit some DFS agents that can identify to me some of the agents that were involved in actually picking up Kiki Camarena.
Obviously.
And so I recruit this one former DFS agent, and he says to me, he says, there's an American that works for the DFS. What? Yeah. He's a electronic specialist. He specializes in wiretapping and communications and stuff like that. I said, he's an American working for the Directorate of Federal Security in Mexico. That's unbelievable. I said, yes. I said, do you know him? He says, yeah. What's his name? I don't know his name, but they call him Torreblanca. Torreblanca, which is White Tower? Yeah, because he's white and he's real tall. And he operates, he sets up repeater systems and radios and all that stuff. He's an electronic genius. And he was working for the DFS. You know him? He says, yeah. He said, would you fly to Mexico and put him on the phone with me? I want to talk to this guy. And I said, what is his name? He says, I don't know, but I'll find out. I'll go down there and I'll put him on the phone with you. He's a friend of mine. I know him. This is a former DFS guy who's now a source of mine.
Okay. So
I sent him down there. 2 days later, he calls me and he says, I got Larry here. His name is Larry Harrison. He says, I'm going to put him on the phone with you. And I get on the phone and in English, I says, hello. He says, I know who you are. You're Hector Berrellez. You're all over the news. He says, you're the one that kidnapped that doctor. And I says, you're right. That's me. I says, I need your help. He says, I'm not going to help you. I said, you don't even know what you're involved in, he told me. He says, F you. And he hung up on me. I said, okay. The informant comes back on the phone. And I said, you tell that gringo to come back on the line right now. And he says, he doesn't want to talk to you anymore, Hector. He says, tell that gringo that I'm going to kidnap his white ass. And he goes, okay, I'll tell him. Tell him I don't give a shit where he hides. I'm coming after him. Yes, I kidnapped that goddamn doctor, and I'm kidnapping his white ass. This is my next kidnapping victim. Yeah. So we hang up. The foreman flies back, and he says, didn't want to talk to you. He says, you don't know what you're involved in. And I said, whatever. I said, I think he'll call me back. Sure as heck. About 3 days later, I get a call from Larry. And he goes, I haven't been able to sleep at night. He says, you are going to kidnap me, aren't you?
He knows what you're capable of.
Love it. I swear. So I started laughing and I said, yeah. He says, I'm glad you haven't been able to sleep. I wouldn't be able to sleep either because I've already got people hunting you down, dude. He says, I'm bringing you in whether you like it or not. Yeah. He says, you work for the DFS and the DFS was involved in Kiki's kidnapping and you're going to come here one way or another, but you're coming here, buddy. So he says, okay. He says, I'll come in, but nobody must know that nobody must know that I'm coming to see you.
Yeah, because it has to be quite a feat anyway, just getting the CIA. This is a CIA officer and like an operative working undercover as you were.
I'm getting to there.
Okay.
It gets better, this story. So they fly him into LA and they put him over here at off of Freeway 10 at the Barranca there at the Marriott Hotel. And so I go see him there. I meet him. And he's a big, tall guy. And I said, you work for the DFS? He says, yeah, I work for the DFS. What do you do there? I'm a communications officer. I set up the repeaters. I set up the radio communications and stuff like that. And I go, okay. So I said, how did you get a job with the DFS, may I ask you? He says, you sure aren't very bright, are you? I said, what do you mean? Are you dumb? He says, you think a white guy can just walk into Mexico and work for their spy agency, which is the DFS, is their spy intelligence agency? Duh. I'm a CIA operative assigned there. I says, no shit. You're not lying to me, are you? He says, no. So what do you think I wanted nobody to know? I says, my agency doesn't know I'm here talking to you right now. I says, whoa. He says, look, he says, we, the CIA, are working with the Guadalajara cartel. We, the CIA, are basically helping them ship all those weapons to the Contras through Mexico. We, the CIA, are bringing in cocaine, and we're selling cocaine to support the Contra war, which Congress, through the Bolden Amendment, has denied helping. So we're doing it all clandestinely.
Right.
And I said, what did you guys have to do with Camarena's murder? And he told me. He says, Camarena, we found out, was going to investigate Carlos Quintero's ranch in Veracruz. We're training Contras there. What? Yes. And basically, they were afraid that Camarena is going to find out about it, that we're basically working with the cartels. So they wanted to know what Kiki knew. That's why we had the cartel guys pick him up. Wow. I didn't know whether to believe him or not. I was floored.
Yeah.
And how do you know about this? He says, because I was the one that set up ground-to-air communications from the Carlos Quintero's ranch in Veracruz, where the training camps are, so that there would be communications with the planes flying in full of cocaine landing there. As a matter of fact, he said, have you heard of Barry Seal? I says, yeah, I know who Barry Seal is. Ask him. I met him there. He was flying in cocaine from the CIA into Carlos Quintero's ranch. A lot of people don't know what I'm telling you right now, but it's in my book. So anyway, I said, well, I can't say I believe all of this stuff you're telling me. So he said, well, I don't give a damn whether you believe me or not. I said, I'm just telling you the truth, and you've gone too far, and you better watch your butt. This is because, you already know too much. You're not supposed to know all this.
And you've already seen what happens to people that knew too much, or even suspected of knowing too much.
So immediately, I go to the undercover phone, official undercover phone, and call the guy in charge of OPR, our Internal Affairs Division, which is Office of Professional Responsibility. Pete Gruden is in charge. And I go, Pete, I got this guy telling me all this stuff. He says, Hector, is this guy 5150? Is he a nutcase? I says, no. I said, do you believe him, Hector? I says, I don't know what to believe anymore. I'm lost. He said, what do you think we should do? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, I think we should maybe fly him up to headquarters and get a head polygraph examiner to polygraph this guy. See if he's telling the truth. And now he's telling me that he can't go back to the CIA now because he's a double agent now. He's betrayed his agency. So he says, fly him up here. I want to meet this guy.
Are you saying he couldn't go to the CIA because he was already working with you guys?
He couldn't go back to his agency because he's already giving all this information up on his own agency.
Okay, right.
So he's betrayed his agency. He's become a double agent. In those words, I've become already a double agent. I can't go back anymore.
Yeah, that's a
you got to protect me now. You got to protect me now.
Yeah.
But I don't like what they did to Camarena, he told me. I wasn't involved, but I know they did it.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So we take him back to Washington, D.C. He's polygraphed for 3 days on all this information about the Contras and the training camps and the CIA sending weapons south secretly because it was prohibited by the Bolden Amendment by Congress. They didn't want us involved in that war because we just came out of Vietnam and they didn't want to be involved in another war.
Right.
So all of that, he's polygraphed and he passes 3 days of polygraphing by our head polygraph examiner, the guy in charge of a whole polygraph unit in DEA.
Okay.
So then I have that. I still haven't recruited any witnesses yet that were there when Camarena was being interrogated. So finally,
Other than the doctor you had.
Yeah, kidnapping the doctor. Okay. When Kiki was being interrogated.
Oh.
Yeah. Who interrogated Kiki? What did they ask him? Everything. We didn't have any other tapes or anything back then.
Okay.
So I bring in one of the witnesses, Jorge Godoy, who I knew had been involved in Kiki's murder because he had been arrested for it in Mexico and had been released. So I sent in one of my former recruiters to go recruit him. And after he got him drunk and everything else, got him on a plane and brought him over here, I got a chance to interrogate him. Okay. I actually went and put him up and hit him up in the mountains up here, Big Bear. We had a cabin out there where I hid witnesses and stuff like that up there with like a security places that DEA had all over the place for witnesses and stuff like that.
Interesting.
And we used to use those cabins undercover to meet crooks and stuff. So I put him up there. And so I started interrogating him. And he tells me about, that he had been involved and worked for Fonseca and Carlos Quintero. He had been a pistolero. And he tells me that one of the persons that had interrogated Kiki was a Cuban guy. And I said, who is this Cuban guy? He said, I don't know. What's his name? He says, Max Gomez. Why would he be interrogating Kiki? What's Cuba or Cubans have to do with this? He says, I don't know, but he ain't Mexican. Ran him through everything, tags, NCIC, everything. Nothing's come back on Max Gomez. 6 months later, we bring in another witness, Rene Lopez Romero, who was in the car when they picked up Kiki in front of the consulate. And he identifies the DFS agents that were with him in the car. He was a state policeman.
Okay.
And again, I asked him who interrogated Kiki, and he says, well, Carlos Quintero did, Cochiloco did, Mexican government officials did, comandantes did. They were all interrogated Kiki. And again, there was a Cuban guy there. He did a lot of the interrogation. Again, who is this Cuban guy? Max Gomez. Ran again. The name Max Gomez, nothing. A year later, I get the third witness, Ramon Lira. I recruit him, and we knew he was involved too. And he used to be in charge of Fonseca security too. So he is a little higher up in the hierarchy of the sicarios or the killers.
Yep.
So I interrogated him, and I said, I said, okay, you were there. Tell me who interrogated Kiki and who asked him what questions, what happened when they held him there. And he tells me, he says, well, these guys were asking him about what he knew about the Contras. I said, the Contras. Remember, I had already talked to Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Contras, the Nicaraguan fighters that were being trained at Carlos Quintero's ranch. And who is this guy? And he goes, Max Gomez. I said, I know. That person doesn't exist. I said, I've read him through all kinds of all the databases. And these are cops I'm talking to, so they understand the databases that I'm explaining to him, and nothing, I don't get a hit on him. Who is this guy? He says his real name is Ismael Felix Rodriguez. He's a CIA operative. He interrogated Camarena, and he says, yes. And how do you know he's a CIA operative? Because he told me. And Fonseca told me that he was a CIA operative. And his name is Ismael Felix Rodriguez. Max Gomez is his CIA undercover name. Oh, I go, okay. And you know this guy? He said, yeah, I know. And how do you know him? Because he used to deliver weapons to Fonseca. And he's the guy that always showed up when Oliver North showed up. What did you just say? Yeah, Oliver North would come and meet with Fonseca.
Aye.
I said, wow. What do I do with this now, Hector?
Who are you going to report that to that's going to believe it?
So anyway, of course I reported it. And all of a sudden, I'm getting called. Have you watched another song? My supervisor who tells me that I was ordered not to write anything on official report, that everything had to go on on memorandums, office memorandums that they can destroy. There's no record of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the story. So then I start getting involved in that. Next thing I know, I'm being told that I have no jurisdiction to investigate the CIA nor their agents.
Which is true, right?
That I'm supposed to report everything on secret memorandums. That the secret memorandums will be forwarded to the Inspector General's office, who does have the jurisdiction to investigate Felix Rodriguez and Oliver North or whoever.
Yep.
So therefore, you write that up and we'll forward it to them. You do not have jurisdiction to investigate the CIA. I said, oh, I'm just a soldier here. I'm just Hector Berrellez, a nobody. Okay? That's the way the story goes. Okay.
Yeah. Sitting on a pot of gold.
So, okay, now what has happened? What has happened is all that stuff was reported. And that's why I want people to watch The Last Narc. Because you see the witnesses tell the story in The Last Narc, the documentary that we did.
Yep.
Which you've seen. But most importantly, don't listen to what I say. Listen to what my supervisors say. Hector Berrellez was ordered not to investigate the murder of Camarena. I want to laugh.
Right. Which is
how do you assign somebody to investigate a homicide, but don't investigate the homicide? So what am I supposed to do? Sit there and go to the movies or what?
Right.
So, and he says, listen to him right there. Hector Berrellez was ordered not to report investigations of CIA's involvement in Kike's murder on DEA 6, which are official reports that he's supposed to write them on office memorandums because they don't want these reports to get to congressional committees, because the John Kerry Commission is investigating the CIA for being involved in drug trafficking. Wow. So then I'm here in LA, and then I'm investigating already. I'm already looking at the Contras, and I'm already looking at the CIA. So what do I find out? I'm involved in doing search warrants on 2 Nicaraguan Contra officials, Danilo Blandon and Edwin Menezes, because they are supplying Freeway Ricky Ross. So we arrest Freeway Ricky Ross, and we never arrest Menezes, nor do we ever arrest Danilo Blandon, the Contra officials. They were supplying him, by the way.
Because
they're CIA people. They're off limits. All right? So I went 180 and the whole thing. And to this day, they're covering that stuff up.
They just got a story and stuck to it, and you were the fall guy essentially at that point.
Yes,
because you look like the buffoon that's trying to claim all these grandiose things that you actually discovered firsthand.
Right. So then I become subject of investigation by my own agency.
Because what spurred that, though? I mean, because they told you stand down or write this on memoranda. You sent it up and fine. So what then spurred it? Were you hollering and waving your hand saying, wait a minute, where's my information gone? Or how did that?
No, I just leave it alone. But then they're afraid because they know that I know.
I see.
That I know the whole truth. So therefore, then they start coming after me. First of all, they actually had a plan, and I have Phil Jordan was during a meeting when they decided that maybe they should turn me into the Mexicans, because remember I had a warrant in Mexico for my arrest for kidnapping Dr. Machine, the guy that injected the drugs into Camarena,
whom you were requested to do by the director.
I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
So therefore, they decide that now they're going to maybe turn me over to the Mexicans. And he decided that if they do, I'll get killed over there. And then That was the point. They were trying to find a way to turn me over
Your own people.
to my own people. Yeah, to the Mexicans. So then they decide not to do that, but then they decide that they're going to dirty me up and investigate me for the murder. I mean, for the kidnapping of the doctor. I want to laugh.
Oh, God. Well, you can laugh now. I'll bet you were crapping your pants then.
Honestly, I couldn't believe it when the inspectors come in from Washington to L.A. and they said, we're here to investigate the kidnapping of Dr. Mashine. And they advised me on my criminal rights by my Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Okay. So what do you want to know? Well, talk to us about the kidnapping of Dr. Mashine. And I says, I kidnapped him. I did it. But I did it under orders of the director of the DEA. Well, he says he didn't order you to do it. And I said, so how did I do it then? If he didn't order me to, where did I get the money to pay the people, the actual people that picked him up? I said, you guys got to be joking with me. I said, you're investigating me for doing a kidnapping that I was ordered to do by our director of the DEA. Are you guys joking with me? They said, no, we're not joking with you. We're here to investigate you. I said, well, I'm just going to tell you guys one thing. Yes, I did it. And I did it under orders of the director of the DEA. And I'm not saying anymore, and I'm going to get attorneys involved here now.
It sounded like that was a smart move at that point.
Mm-hmm. I said, I can't sit here and deny that I did kidnap the guy. It's all over the damn news.
That's a good thing.
So anyway, so where am I going with this is that I retire and I'm afraid to say anything anymore because I'm wanted in Mexico and I know these Eagles want to send me to Mexico. And as I'm leaving, I turned 50 and I could retire and get my full benefits. I'm being told, you better keep your mouth shut. Because you still have the warrant in Mexico and you might end up over there. So for 13 years, I kept my mouth shut after that. And because it's 20 years before the warrant expired in Mexico for my arrest for kidnapping a Mexican citizen.
So you had to wait until that 20-year expiration before you could.
So after the 20 years, Caro Quintero is released in Mexico because they had already picked him up in Mexico for Caro Quintero's for Kike Camarena's murder. I'm talking about Rafael Caro Quintero, who is now here facing those charges. But anyway, so they call the news media is all excited that Caro Quintero are upset that he's been released, and they call the director of DEA, who was then Michelle Linhart, and they ask her about it, and she says she's been told by the Obama people she can't comment on it, and so she says, but talk to Hector Berrellez, he can tell you all about it, and I'm retired. Mm-hmm. So then they get a hold of me, and who interviews me? Megan Kelly.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm on the Megan Kelly show, and she asked me about what are my feelings about the Mexican government releasing Caro Quintero, and I explained to her the whole thing about how it was basically a legal strategy, an illegal strategy, I said, to release him because they're saying they're releasing Caro Quintero because he should have never been tried federally, that the homicide was a state crime, and that Caro Quintero should have been charged on state charges, and that's why they were releasing him.
It was a technicality.
The technicality, and then I explained on the show that basically when we're in Mexico, like Kiki was, we are given permission by Exterior Relations, which is an agency of the Mexican government, that we can work over there like federal agents. So therefore, it was just an illegal strategy to release him. And by the way, I said, that our CIA was complicit in that murder. And she almost fell out of her chair. She says, what did you just say?
Yeah.
And I stated the CIA was complicit in Kiki Camarena's interrogation and murder. I said it right live on TV. That was the first time I had exposed it. So it was wow.
And the turmoil that followed
Well,
you and your family and all that.
well, absolutely. You know, I became like, to this day, they say I'm a liar. I mean,
Yeah.
how can they say I'm a liar? I mean, they still say that none of it is true. Matter of fact, they warned, the agencies warned, both CIA and DEA warned Amazon that if they put on the last Narc, that they were going to sue them because it wasn't a credible story, that the witnesses are credible. So, but the witnesses testified in 3 federal courts, and we convicted 7 people for Kiki's murder, and the witnesses are the ones that you see in the last Narc on their testimony.
Yeah. And they
So-
haven't recanted.
No, not to this day.
Yeah.
So now what have you got? You got them actually destroying the case because those witnesses, they call them liars now, and they can't revive them anymore. So now we're going to get to now. Trump gets elected. He sends Rubio down there to meet with the president of Mexico and says, hey, we want these guys. We want them in the United States. And if you surrender them to us, we will not basically take them out. We won't go in there because now they've been declared terrorist organizations.
Right.
And now, if you don't cooperate with us, if you don't take them out, we're going to take them out for you. Those are orders of Donald J. Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So the president of Mexico says, well, we can't legally extradite him to the U.S. because we don't believe in the death penalty. And like because on the list was Rafael Caro Quintero, and we can't do it. So, well, you better figure out something because Donald J. Trump is very serious. He's not playing with the cartels.
Yeah.
So they decide to expel them, not extradite them. So they throw them out like trash. So now we have Rafael Caro Quintero in New York.
And that's just this year he was picked up, right?
Talking about 6-8 months ago.
Yeah.
Recently.
Last year, yeah.
Okay. So what is he doing in New York? He's being tried in New York on CCE and RICO drug trafficking charges. The warrant for Rafael Caro Quintero for Kiki's murder is out of the Central District out of Los Angeles. What does it tell me? That they're covering it up. Okay. They don't want to try him on Kiki's murder because all this CIA stuff that I just mentioned to you will come out.
Right.
So they're hoping to indict him on CCE and RICO, convict him, and he gets life, and it'll be the end of it.
Everybody be quiet.
And everybody's happy.
Camarena's family hopefully be happy, even though it's not a conviction on his murder, which is never going to happen, right? I mean, they're not going to arrest.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But remember when Caro Quintero was brought in, our president, Donald J. Trump, went public and he said, we got the guy that killed Camarena and we're going to charge him with Camarena's murder and basically apply the law, basically the full force of the law against Caro Quintero for killing Kiki Camarena. And they got him and they haven't even charged him with Camarena's murder.
And the politics settle in.
So basically, to see where it's at now, is he going to be tried? I don't know. Because when people find out that he's not being charged with Camarena's murder, you're going to say, why? Where's the case on Caro Quintero killing Camarena's murder?
Right.
Being Camarena's murder, and killing Camarena. What do you think is going to happen now?
Well, I don't know. I think they're going to sit on that and his co-conspirators until they perish. That's what they're going to do. Because once they're dead, what are you going to do? All you do is drag your feet long enough to where that it never gets addressed again. I mean, what his co-conspirators, 95 for something? I don't remember which cat's name. The other
El Mayo, Zambada, you mean? No, they're not that. They're in the 60s or 70s. They're not 90s.
Okay, I thought one of the kingpin guys, one of the
Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo might be, but he's in Mexico. He's not here.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious about is what are they going to answer to the reporters when they find out that he's not being charged with Kiki's murder? What are they going to say? We don't need to because we already got him life. Well, wait a minute. Isn't murder, especially of a federal agent, more egregious than drug trafficking?
Why wouldn't you start with the murder?
Why is he not here in L.A. with the murder?
Well, it may be because they've been the ones to discredit the only witnesses that can help him and you.
Thank you.
So,
And they don't want to. They don't want to be exposed to that.
yeah,
Why? To protect who?
themselves. And the CIA is still working hard to keep all that stuff under
To
wraps.
protect Felix Rodriguez, Oliver North, and further up, the Bush administration.
Do you think it got past Ollie North? That's sort of a side topic, but do you obviously he
Of
swore,
course.
hey, I kept it here. Do you think he ever reported
Well,
all
it
that?
was all the way up. I mean, come on, Bush was former CIA director.
Yeah.
They were involved in all that stuff and doing the clandestine shipping of the weapons to the Contras and the money and the drugs and all that other stuff to support the war, which was an unauthorized war
Right.
By Congress. And remember, they were also under investigation by the Kerry Commission for being involved in that,
Right.
and they covered it up.
Yep.
So it's bigger. This thing is way bigger than people realize it.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm just wondering if Donald J. Trump finds out about it. I don't think he knows. I don't think he knows that they haven't even charged him with Kiki's murder. I wonder what he would do. Because remember, he has no love for the CIA
Yeah, he has no love for any of those federal
or
agencies.
the FBI. He doesn't.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's
that's-
get it out there. Let's get it out there. I mean, all we can do is just try to promote the story because I think justice is justice is justice. And that's really what it comes down to. And I do feel like the turmoil that you had to experience following that, your family's turmoil and all the experiences that have followed you is terribly unfair. And were already dealing with another injustice on your behalf. It's stacked upon Kiki's
Right.
injustice.
Right.
So I do feel like it's an important story to tell. And, I'm greatly appreciative of the fact that you're willing to share it because I know at your own risk, you're having to share this stuff as well. You don't know to what degree people are going to go to in order to protect this information. But I think it's important that we know about it.
Absolutely. I honestly feel that, and I know because I've already been called by numerous reporters saying, hey, what's happened to the Camarena murder case? What's happening to the case in L.A. on the murder? And we've already contacted DEA and Main Justice, and they don't have any answers for us. They're not going to answer. They don't know what to say.
They probably don't even know what the status is either. I mean, now you've got people that are in charge that really had nothing to do with any of that back when it was happening anyway. So they have plausible deniability now. I don't know nothing, right?
Yeah, but the warrant is still outstanding for Kiki's murder. How are they going to answer that? There's a murder warrant for Carlos Quintero for Kiki's murder. And he's being tried just on drug trafficking. Why is he not here facing the murder charge? Somebody's got to answer that somehow.
I don't know who could answer that. I mean, it's got to be somebody in the Justice Department, though, still would have an answer. Wouldn't you have the right U.S. attorney ask that question?
Remember,
perhaps?
there's no statute of limitation for murder,
Yeah,
especially of a federal agent. So the warrant is still there.
especially.
Are they not? They have the guy, but they're not going to charge him with it. That is where we're at.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening right now.
Well, it's a mess, man. Do you have a plan? You have a good plan for how we get this across besides telling the story?
You know what? I am so jaded anymore with all the corruption that we see nowadays, all the corruption that I'm like, there's so much corruption anymore that I don't trust neither party.
Yeah.
There are bad folks. And the deep state is not just in the Democratic Party nor in the Republican. They're both. It took somebody like Donald Trump to come in who was not a politician to say, hey, folks, I'm coming in. And he came in like a bull in a china cabinet. That's why they've tried to kill him and everything else because this guy basically exposed the whole deep state, the whole corruption.
Yeah.
How do you think, for instance, DEA guys felt when we were seizing plane loads of cocaine? And I'm talking plane loads of cocaine flown by CIA pilots. And we're told to let the pilot go and give him back the cocaine. But yet they're considering go arrest anybody, idiot down there for 10 ounces and put him away for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And these guys are bringing in tons. How could you do your job after that? How could I do my job? And I'm talking back when I was DA 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's gotten worse.
Yep, it is worse.
And I see the corruption now, and I'm like, what? You don't know what to believe. Oh, Charlie Kirk just got shot. The Mossad was behind it. What? Why would the Mossad want to kill Charlie Kirk? Well, no, it wasn't the Mossad. It was some other conspiracy theorists that are thrown out there. You don't know what to believe anymore.
Right.
You know?
And that's what you're up against, too. Is
exactly.
Now that they've tried to discredit you, then you sound like a conspiracy theorist coming forward. But you're just telling a firsthand account. And that's what we need to make clear. This is an experience that you have firsthand. This isn't, I've heard about this and retelling somebody else's story. I mean, you were the guy inside this, and you still have the witnesses, and you were damn good at vetting your witnesses as well. These were all independent witnesses, right?
Right. And not only that, the way we handled it was we would get one witness, and we would basically segregate them, where when we got the second witness, they didn't even know that he was here, or they couldn't compare. In other words, they were all segregated so that we could get the pure truth. Because, you know, when one witness says, like, there was when they killed those 2 Americans, I'll never forget it, they killed those 2 Americans at the restaurant, Carlos Quintero and the folks. They killed 2 Americans at the Langosta restaurant. And one witness tells me that Ruben Zuno Arce was there. Ruben Zuno Arce being the owner of the house where Kiki was interrogated, tortured, and murdered. And he said he was there too when they killed those 2 Americans. And one of the witnesses says, I remember him being there, and he was the only one wearing like a suit, but it wasn't a suit. He was wearing a blue sports jacket. Write it down. Okay. A year later, here comes another witness that was there, and he says, yeah, Ruben Zuno was there. And then remembered, what was he wearing? Kind of like a sports jacket. It was blue. But if you tell the truth, I mean, two people that haven't talked that come in a year later after each other, and you know they were at the same, let's say, party or whatever, and they even say who was there and how they were dressed. So it's like this. When I first brought the first witness, and they told me that this guy Max Gomez was involved in interrogating Kiki. At first, you don't know whether to believe it or not. But then when you have another witness comes in and tells you the same story that this guy was involved in interrogating Camarena, you got to tell yourself, wait a minute. It's like this. If we send an astronaut to the moon and he tells us that they're extraterrestrials, they're 4 foot tall, they're green, and they have 3 fingers, and then a year later you send another one and he says, yeah, I saw the extraterrestrial and he was 4 foot and was green and had 3 fingers, you got to say, there got to be extraterrestrials in the moon. Because how could they know?
If the first one hadn't made it public, of course.
Thank you. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the way it was with the Camarena case. I mean, this is how we were able to distinguish by asking them different and then questions like as you know, they mean anything. Like, what was the guy wearing? What food was being served there? What mariachi group was playing there? What songs were? What was the atmosphere like? And when you have people that were there that say basically the same thing, you gotta be they're telling the truth.
Easy to distinguish the
exactly.
The minor details.
My take is this. Very simple. I brought in 3 witnesses that were present and saw who interrogated Camarena. And not only did they saw who interrogated him, saw how they tortured him, who tortured him, how they waterboarded him, and also basically